Yes, Mr. Stewart.
As right pleases. The next witness is Mr. Alan Penchef. His witness statement should be at tab 6 of the statements bundle, and I believe that is Mr. Penchef appearing from Brisbane on video.
Yes.
Mr. Penchef, can you hear me?
Yes.
It'll be necessary for you to be sworn. Have you got a Bible there?
I do, yes.
Would you take the Bible in your hand and stand for me, please? And repeat after me.
I do, yes.
Would you take the Bible in your hand and stand for me, please? I shall give in this royal commission.
That the evidence I shall give in this royal commission
Shall be the truth.
shall be the truth,
The whole truth.
the whole truth,
And nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Yes, thank you. You can sit down now, thanks. Yes, Mr. Stewart.
Mr. Penchef, would you state your full names, please?
Alan Christopher Penchef.
Do you have a copy of your statement for the Royal Commission dated 10 July 2015 available to you?
I do, yes.
Are there any corrections you wish to make to that statement?
In terms of corrections, having read over the documents you've provided, it has brought back to my mind some information that I hadn't recalled, but not in terms of corrections, no.
So the point is you would say more now than what you said, but not say it differently, is that it?
Yeah, as I said, that information reminded me of what happened 12 years ago, whereas it had been, in my memory, quite dull at the time
Yes.
of the statement.
Thank you, Mr. Penchef. Well, perhaps some of that detail will emerge in the things that I am to ask you about. Do you then confirm your statement as true and correct?
Yes.
I attended the statement, Your
It'll
Honour.
be Exhibit 2918.
Now, Mr. Penchef, as I understand it, you've been a Jehovah's Witness for the past 41 years, is that right?
That's correct.
How did you come to be a Jehovah's Witness?
I was contacted when I was 19 in the door-to-door ministry that the witnesses conduct, and started a Bible study. I then studied the Bible with them for a period of time, was convinced of what I was being taught, and in turn became a baptised, dedicated witness.
And when were you first appointed an elder, Mr. Penchef?
I don't remember the exact date, but I would say it would be around 35 years ago. I was baptised in 1973, so I'm thinking it was about 6 years later.
So about 1979 or so.
In that time frame, yes.
Yes. And have you served continuously as an elder since then?
Yes.
And what is your current congregation, Mr. Penchef?
Mainly Queensland.
And for how long have you served as an elder in that congregation?
7 years.
How big is that congregation?
Approximately 100 publishers.
Now, do you recall the dates on which you were an elder in the Logan Home congregation?
I was there for 14 years. I left in 2005. So I guess that takes it back to around 1991 through to 2005.
And how big was that congregation when you served there?
I think around between 120 to 150.
Thank you. Now, in your statement, Mr. Penchef, at paragraph 4.1, you say that, to the best of your recollection, you've only dealt with a couple of cases of child sexual abuse within the church in your time. as they are a very rare event amongst Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, you will have heard that it's been presented in these proceedings that there were 1,006 alleged perpetrators of child sexual abuse within the Jehovah's Witness Church in 65 years. Did you hear that?
Yes, I did see that.
And in respect of substantial number of those alleged perpetrators, there may be several allegations. Do you accept that?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Sorry?
In respect of substantial numbers, or at least some of those alleged perpetrators, there may be several allegations. In other words, more than just one case.
So more than one person accusing the perpetrator? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I guess so. I wouldn't know.
But even on the figure of 1,006, that amounts to 15 perpetrators per year on average, which is more than one a month. On that basis, would you still say that it's an extremely rare event amongst Jehovah's Witnesses?
Considering the number of congregations and the number of cases, yes.
Yes. Now, if we look specifically at BCG's case, as I understand it, you were an elder at the Logan Home congregation when BCH, that's BCG's father, joined that congregation. Is that right?
That's correct.
And he came to you from St. George after he'd been reinstated by Mariba. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
And as I understand it, you then came to chair a judicial committee at Logan Home looking into the possible disfellowshipping of BCH once again. Is that right?
Yes.
I'd like you to have a look at tab 40.
Yes.
Which, if yours is the same as mine, would be a letter dated 1 November 2002 from Watchtower, Australia, to the presiding overseer at Logan Home. Is that the one you have?
It is, yes.
And that was in the period that you were an elder at Logan Home. This particular letter is addressed to dear brother Harrop. Was he the presiding overseer at that time?
Yes, he was.
Did you become aware of this letter?
Yes.
You'll see on the second page the branch. Well, sorry, before you go to the second page, just looking at the first page, who do you understand this letter to be coming from at the branch?
In terms of individual or persons, there's no person's name attached. It usually would come from the service department.
You see it says LLC, the reference that's given at the top next to the date. Do you know what that reflects?
No.
You don't. But you would expect that it would come from the service department?
Yeah, the service department in the branch.
And you'll see that the branch says that they're writing in connection with Brother BCH, who we understand associates with the Logan Home congregation. He was disfellowshipped in the Mariba congregation in 1989 and reinstated in 1992. And then it goes on in the second paragraph to mention that he has recently been prosecuted for sexually interfering with two of his daughters some years ago. And then various aspects of the history are set out. But now if you look at the second page and the third last paragraph, the one that begins 2 elders, do you see that?
Yes.
So it says 2 elders should be appointed to approach Brother BCH and inform him that they are aware that he has been charged by 2 of his daughters of sexually molesting them. And the elders should also inform him that they are aware it is a matter of public record, and so it goes on. Were you then one of the 2 elders who was appointed to look into this matter?
I was.
And was that the cause of a judicial committee then being established?
yes.
And that's the Judicial Committee you served on.
That's correct.
Right, if you then look at tab 41, on the face of it is a memorandum from the service, I beg your pardon, from legal V2 to the service department, 23 January 2003. I take it this didn't come to your attention at that time, back in when you were dealing with the matter?
No, that was a branch memorandum. It wasn't sent to the congregation.
Yes. And if one looks at the last paragraph on page 3, and the legal department is saying, as I understand it, and I want to know what your understanding was at the time, that the charge against BCH for your Judicial Committee was one of lying. Is that right? See, the last sentence says the primary issue before the present committee is the charge of lying.
Yeah, that's correct. The initial allegations by BCG had already been established, so we were dealing with whether or not he was continuing to tell the truth.
Yes, well, I'll come back to what had been established and what hadn't in a moment. Would you take a look at tab 42? Now, this is the form being the formal recordal of his now second disfellowshipping, that's BCH's, on 11 March 2003, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And I take it that's your second disfellowshipping, that's BCH's, on 11 March 2003, is that correct?
That's correct.
And in the middle of the page it sets out the reasons for the disfellowshipping.
Yes.
Now, the previous disfellowshipping, that's the one in 1989, was, amongst other things, in respect of child sexual abuse against one of his daughters, BCG, is that right?
I wasn't. I believe so, based on what I've read. Yes.
Yes. And you disfellowshipped him now for lying. Is that right?
Yeah, lying in relation to the allegations his daughter was making.
Yes. So, in your reasons, you say that he denies the child abuse allegations of his 3 daughters and lies about it. Is that right?
Yes.
So you, as I understood it, accepted that the child abuse allegations in respect of the other daughters was true. Accepted that the child abuse allegations in respect of the other...
So that we were forced to believe that it was true, yes.
So you accepted the evidence that was presented to you in relation to that, and accepted that he had abused daughters in addition to BCG.
Based on their 3 testimonies, yes, but the courts would later establish that legally.
Are you able to explain why the allegations by the other daughters were not considered for the disfellowshipping? In other words, why was he not disfellowshipped the second time for, as it would be put, I understand, porneia in relation to his other 2 daughters rather than for lying?
In the letter from the branch, it asked us just to leave the other allegations from the other daughter until the legal case had been finalised. We were mainly to look at his current honesty with regard to what had happened, and as a result, when we questioned him, we felt we didn't have to wait to disfellowship him after with regard to what had happened, and as a result, when we questioned him.
And then if we have a look at tab 43, document dated 23 March 2002, and it has 3 names across the bottom, including 2 signatures. I see there's not a signature adjacent to your name. Is this nevertheless the recorded decision of your Judicial Committee?
Yes, that's an expanded explanation.
Yes. And notwithstanding your signature is not there, are we to understand that you engaged in and supported the reasons that are set out in this document?
Absolutely.
Are you aware whether you signed another copy of the document?
No, I'm surprised I haven't signed this one, and I would have an eye. It must have just been an oversight.
And did you, as chair of that committee, actually write the document?
I believe so, yes.
So there's no respect in which you disagree with it?
No, I fully agree with it.
Mr. Pinchef, a moment ago you said that you were forced to the conclusion that he was lying, and in this document you see towards the end of it, you say, if you look at it with me, we had no choice but to disfellowship him. What are you meaning? Are you saying that it was difficult to come to that conclusion, or what?
No, not at all. We, as you know, we use the Bible principle of there being 2 or 3 witnesses to a allegation. In this case, there were 3, so that drew us to what was a logical conclusion that something had happened, and we then decided that rather than wait any longer, we could remove him from the congregation to protect him and any other potential victims, or protect the congregation rather, or any other potential victims. So we weren't hesitant. We were just looking for the right grounds based on the direction we'd been given at the time.
Now, Mr. Pinchef, just in relation to what you said a few minutes ago about why your Judicial Committee did not investigate the complaints of abuse of the other daughters, and your answer was that you'd been instructed by the branch to leave those alone because they were the subject of the criminal trial. At least that's as I understood you. Is that right?
Yes, if you go back to the document, the first letter that you read, or you commented on.
That's at tab 40.
Tab 40, yes.
The letter of 1 November 2002.
That's correct, yeah.
Yes, and what are you referring to in that letter?
I'll just go through there. At the top of the page, the first paragraph, it said, "We do not want you to follow up on the matter involving BCG, since it has already been handled to the extent possible at this stage. We simply provide this as background information to assist you to be aware of the kind of actions that Brother BCH has exhibited in connection with past wrongdoing." And then it says, "As mentioned already, Brother BCH has pleaded guilty to sexually abusing another of his daughters, BCL. We understand that this incident in question occurred in '88. I was approximately 6 years of age, etc." And then, "This is the first we have heard of this accusation." A little further down, "We understand this has never been handled. We therefore want the elders in your congregation to handle the matter, and we suggest you proceed with in the following manner. 2 elders should be appointed to approach Brother BCH, informing that they are aware that he has been charged by 2 of his daughters of sexually molesting them, and then should inform him that they are aware of the matter being on public record, and that it is a matter of public record that he has entered a plea of guilty to 3 charges of sexual assault and to 1 charge of sexually interfering with one of his daughters when she was 6. He should be asked to explain his actions. We would like to assault and to 1 charge of sexually interfering with one of his daughters when she was 6. He should be asked to explain his actions. We would like to think that he'll be forthcoming with sufficient information to enable the matter to be handled judicially. If he's not prepared to cooperate and provide with the elders an admission of his wrongdoing, even though he has already done so on public record, I'd like them to contact the legal department before proceeding further. If you have any questions, please contact us. And I think a bit earlier there was some comments too.
Well, Mr. Penchef, the bits that you've read, including the bit that you cut short at the end of the last sentence you read, which said you'll likely be disfellowshipped for sexually abusing BCL, in other words, another daughter as a child, as well as for being dishonest, seemed to suggest that the branch was telling you that you should now handle the matter that had not previously been handled, in other words, the abuse of BCL. In other words...
I'll just read back a little further because I didn't highlight the point, but I felt in that letter the direction was clear. Just give me a moment. I think I had reference to that, the first paragraph that I read, that we weren't to follow up on the matter regarding BCG. We provide this as background to assist you to be aware of the kind of action that he has exhibited. The second daughter was not involved with Jehovah's Witnesses at the time, and the matter was before the court. So based on that, it wasn't. We were to leave it to when the court took action to make that final decision. So we were more looking at his honesty in this particular instance, and as opposed to dealing with the second allegation.
Well, it certainly suggests, Mr. Penchef, doesn't it, that in the view that your judicial committee took of matters, a charge of dishonesty is more serious and pressing to be investigated and resolved than a charge of sexual abuse of a daughter.
No, the two go hand in hand. We were looking at his honesty in regard to the sexual abuse of the daughter.
Well,
we weren't looking at whether he stole something from the corner shop. We were talking about some serious allegations to which he had already confessed and now was denying. So we were very serious about that matter. But we were leaving the legal side of, or the legal system to establish it legally. We couldn't establish it by talking to his second daughter because she wasn't one of Jehovah's Witnesses at the time. So we had to go by what the legal system would come up with and what the gentleman involved here was prepared to say about it.
well,
But the two were inextricably linked. We weren't divorcing one from the other.
Well, I have to say that your professed seriousness with regard to how you dealt with the question of the abuse of BCL is not supported by the reasons that you gave.
In what way?
It put the dishonesty front and centre and not the sexual abuse.
But can't you see that the two are the same? It's dishonesty in regard to that. And we left the matter to the legal system to establish it legally.
Well, perhaps we'll leave that, Mr. Penchef, as a matter for submissions in due course. Can I ask you to have a look at tab 46? This is a letter that came from the branch in May of 2006 to the Judicial Committee at Logan Home. But on the basis of what you told us earlier, I might understand that you had left Logan Home by that time.
Yes, I left in 2005, so never saw this correspondence.
Yes. Now, there's further correspondence with regard to the Chimera congregation and then subsequently the Kalamunda congregation, from where BCH was seeking reinstatement. I take it you were not involved in any of that?
No, after 2005, that would have been been handled by the then body of elders in Loganholme.
Do you nevertheless know what the ultimate outcome has been? In other words, has BCH been reinstated or not?
To my understanding, no.
Thank you, Your Honour. Those are my questions.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Yes, Your Honour.
Mr. Coyne, the only one?
None from me, Your Honour.
Yes, Mr. Coyne.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Coyne. I represent Mr. Pencheth and others. Could we bring up tab 46, please? Mr. Pencheth, you have a copy of tab 46, do you not?
I do, yes.
That was the letter that you were just directed to?
Yes.
Okay. Your committee disfellowshipped BCH in 2003. Is that right?
Yes.
So if you look at that letter, if you go to the second last paragraph of the first page, that is what is stated there at the beginning of that paragraph. BCH was disfellowshipped again in 2003.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. If you then go to the following paragraph, it says, after corresponding with the branch office, the Judicial Committee decided to disfellowship him on the charge of lying. The S77 report stated that he has continued to change his story depending on what he thinks is the most expedient at the time, and that on 3 separate occasions he denied the charges but later confessed. They wrote, and when they say they wrote, that's talking about your committee, is that correct?
Yeah, that's a quotation from those earlier documents.
Yes, and you said he has 3 daughters claiming he molested them, and he continues to deny their claims and lies about it to the Judicial Committee and law courts to serve his own ends. Although the Judicial Committee were aware of further allegations of sexual abuse being raised by 2 other daughters, it appears that they did not make any statements to the elders at the time. Apparently, they received legal advice not to disclose this information, as it may have prejudiced the legal case against their father. Correct?
That's what it reads, yes.
Is that your understanding? It may have prejudiced the legal case against their father. Correct?
That's what it reads, yes.
Is that your understanding of the advice received by the committee when you were dealing with this matter?
Yes.
And at the next paragraph, it says, in summary, it is our understanding that the allegations of sexual abuse made against Mr. BCH have been clearly substantiated.
Definitely.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pencheth. That concludes your evidence and you're excused.
Thank you.
Your Honour, the next witness will be Mr. Rodney Spinks.
Is there a Bible over there? One of those? Mr. Spinks, it will be necessary to have you sworn to tell the truth, I see you have a Bible with you, is that right?
Yes.
Could you repeat after me, please? I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God,
that the evidence I shall give in this royal commission
the evidence I shall give in this royal commission
shall be the truth,
shall be the
the
truth,
whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Yes, thank you. Take a seat. Yes, Mr. Stewart.
Right, please. Mr. Spinks, would you state your full names, please?
Rodney Peter Spinks.
And do you have, excuse me, a copy of your statement for the Royal Commission dated 10 July 2015?
Yes.
Are there any amendments you wish to make to the statement?
No.
Do you confirm the statement to be true and correct?
Yes.
I tender the statement, Your Honour.
It'll be Exhibit 2919.
Mr. Spinks, what is your current occupation?
I'm a full-time volunteer minister at the headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses here in Sydney.
And in particular, what position or role do you occupy at those headquarters?
In the service department, caring for service desk responsibilities as a senior service desk member.
Are you the senior service desk member?
We explain it that way so everyone can understand it. I'm the longest serving, consulted by other service desks. I have no different title, but yes, the senior service desk.
And that's a full-time responsibility, is it?
Correct.
And is that an employed position?
No. No salary. I'm provided with accommodation, basic necessities, no salary.
And is that through being a member, or are you a member of the Worldwide Order of Special Full-Time Servants of Jehovah's Witnesses?
Correct.
And that's an organisation that provides for people in full-time positions such as yourself, is that right?
That's correct.
And so do you live at the branch office premises?
Yes, my wife and I have a room there.
Yes. And is there some sort of stipend attached to that?
Around $10 per day, yes, to cover incidental personal hygiene expenses, etc.
And as I understand it, you've been at the branch office since 2007, is that right?
That's correct.
And you've been associated with the Jehovah's Witnesses since 1965?
Yes, that's when my parents first became Jehovah's Witnesses.
And you were baptised as a member of the Jehovah's Witnesses more than 40 years ago?
Yes.
So would it be fair to say that membership of the Jehovah's Witnesses has been a defining feature of your whole life?
Absolutely.
You served as a ministerial servant from the early 1980s, is that right?
Yes.
And as a congregation elder since 1987?
Yes.
Now, in your statement, you say you were a member of the Beenleigh East congregation from 1978 to 1990. When were you an elder there at Beenleigh East?
I was first appointed as an elder in Beenleigh.
And when was that?
I think from recollection it was 1987.
And do you recall when it was in 1990 that you left Beenleigh?
Yes. September, October 1990, I moved to North Queensland.
Now, you've mentioned there's a service desk at the branch office. How many people work at the service desk?
In the 8.5, 9 years I've been there, it's varied according to workload. Presently, 5 members specifically service desk. It has been more, but currently 5.
And how many people work at the branch office in total?
Again, varies. They're all volunteers, between 350 to 400 at any time.
And how many are actually accommodated there?
Most of those, we have a few commuters, but the majority of those would be accommodated there.
So since 10 July and now, which is the 4th of August, has the number of people at the service desk changed considerably?
No, not considerably. I think one older member has gone to other duties, but it's been a similar number in the time that I've been there, maybe one or two more at various times.
Well, perhaps you can clarify for me, is there a distinction between the service department and the service desk?
A small distinction. The service department is the entire group that effectively interface with the congregations. And so the duties all relate to what we would call the service or ministry. So the 5 I've spoken of specifically deal with congregation spiritual type matters. But we have a desk and assistant caring for conventions, for the formation of new congregations, for maintenance of the jw.org website, etc.
I see. And the legal department, is that separate from the service department?
It's located separately within the branch office there with its own staff.
And so what other departments are there besides service and legal?
So we have a large printery, so there's a significant number of the volunteers are engaged with our large printing presses. We have a large shipping department where trucks coming and going and literature are coming in and out. In addition, we obviously have a graphics department for the preparation of materials, a number of support services, large housekeeping contingency. We have a large kitchen and dining room that are all well staffed. We have volunteer engineering, gardening, etc. And we also have a large design build office for construction of Kingdom halls and branch offices in the region. So that's just a few of the departments. There are others too.
And the 350 to 400 volunteers who reside at the branch headquarters, if I might refer to it as that, are they separately members of congregations, or is there a congregation there? What do they do for their ordinary weekly worship?
Yeah, they're all members of different congregations from Sydney City to Penrith to down to Wollongong, so a few in each congregation within travelling distance.
Can you explain what is the responsibility of the service department as a whole, and in particular distinguishing it from the legal department?
So how we would define it internally, and I'm happy to expand on that, but the service department deals with the theocratic or spiritual aspects, particularly of the work. The primary role of the legal department is obviously there are corporations, there are property issues, etc., and also advice in relation to legal matters that the service department might deal with. So there's certainly an integration between the legal department and the service department on some matters.
And perhaps you could help me, because in some of the correspondence it's not clear, to me at least, who it's come from, who's generated it. So a number of the documents or correspondence have the initials SD. What are we to understand that to refer to?
That certainly comes out of the service department.
Right, but not necessarily. The service correspondence have the initials SD. What are we to understand that to refer to? SD. There are the initials SSA. How are we to understand that?
So workflow related. So depending on what workflow an individual's working on, it's all electronic now. The workflow comes in electronically and out electronically, so it's what I would refer to as a workflow assignment method for distributing the work around the department.
Well, this particular initial SSA goes back a long time. I imagine long before it was all digitally done or electronically done, but perhaps I'm wrong. Can you just explain that? Because there's SSA, I've seen SSD, SSG, SSB. Are those particular individuals given that cipher, or how does it work?
It would certainly be a particular individual on a day or a week, perhaps a month. The workflow, for example, that I've generated in the time that I've been there has been with 4 or 5 different desk symbols depending on which particular work. But it's true to say that on a particular day, the department would know who's handling the SSA workflow.
So if there was a particular letter on a particular date which said SD:SSA, you'd be able to go back and know who was responsible for that letter?
I'd know who did it now, and probably in recent history. It'd be extremely difficult to work out which individual, whether they're still there, and 2, which individual it was that was using that desk symbol at the time, but that would be possible.
And then some of the documents have the letters CA on them. What does that represent?
I believe it relates to correspondence. It's not what I've commonly seen, but I believe that is a general correspondence desk, meaning when general inquiries come in.
Well, would you take a look at tab 26? You'll see that this is the disfellowshipping or disassociation S77 form in relation to BCH, recording the date that he was disfellowshipped and then later reinstated, and it has in the top right-hand corner CA 18 January 77 form in relation to BCH, recording the date that he was disfellowshipped and then later reinstated.
That each letter that came in physically would be opened by the elder at the correspondence desk, and he's date stamped it, so that would be whoever was opening correspondence on the 18th of January 1993.
But the CA representing that it was the correspondence desk, or representing that it was a particular elder? What is this?
To my knowledge, sorry.
Carry on.
To my knowledge, there's only ever been, certainly in my time, it's not a large task, one elder opening the mail, so whoever it was at that time, that's certainly way before my time, but it would have been the elder who was opening the mail that day.
So that's really to be taken as a receipt stamp for when the particular document arrived at, or at least was opened at the branch office?
Yes, primarily as a date stamp to say that's the date we received it.
Now, SSB, I take it, is another workflow designation, as with SSA, is that right?
That's correct.
And LLC?
LLC would generally be from the legal department if it starts with an L.
All right, and then LLD, similarly, I assume?
Yes.
And LLF?
Yes.
And what about SF?
That would be out of the service department.
On the same basis as SSB or SSA, or designating something different?
I'm not sure why the different designation there. Sometimes the additional symbol related to an elder who was a secretary, that's not been constant, but SF is definitely a service department desk symbol that's been used.
Thank you.